Probably a few more people will be signing on, but I just wanted to just welcome everybody to Primetime. My name is Gwen Williams. I am the Primetime Professional Development Trainer here. So those of you who know me already know that. Um, so I wanted to say welcome. We have some other members of Primetime. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves as well.
Morning, everyone. My name's Anita Winkus. I'm a quality advisor here at Primetime and happy to see everyone today.
Morning, everyone. I'm Nicole Tarsia. I'm the Scholarship and Incentive Specialist at Primetime. Glad to see you here.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Katie Jacob. I'm the Director of Communications.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rose Newbold, and I'm the Assessment Manager here at Primetime.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gina Moore Weatherspoon, and I'm a Quality Advisor with Primetime. Welcome.
My name is Paola, and I am a Quality Advisor with Primetime. Good morning.
All right, then we'll do Jen, then Paola.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you this morning. I'm Jennifer Jones. I'm the Professional Development Manager. Welcome.
And I'm Paola Cedeño. I am the Event and Data Management Specialist here at Primetime.
Good morning. I'm Suzette Harvey. I'm President and CEO of Primetime.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Julie Meyer, Human Resources Generalist. Good to see you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dina Jo Booker. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Controller at Primetime.
Good morning. I'm Celine Provini, Director of Research with Primetime.
All righty. Right now, we're introducing all of the Primetime people. So if you are from Primetime, you haven't introduced yourself, you can do so verbally or in the chat box.
Good morning. I'm Knellee Bisram, SEL Specialist with Primetime.
Good morning. I'm Elisa Morrow. I'm the Career Advisor and Registry Coach.
Good morning. I am Teal Chance, Director of Quality Improvement with Primetime.
Good morning. I'm Luisa Vincent. I'm the Community Partnerships Specialist at Primetime.
All right. Well, I think we got everybody from Primetime. Again, welcome to Reflection Conversation. This is open forum. I really would like to call this like welcome to the Primetime parlor room, because back in the day, the parlor room was like that front room, you know, in the house where everybody would come, you know, all the grown people come and they sit and they conversate like right after church or it just in general. And so there was a room that, you know, as a kid, we couldn't go into. It usually was covered in plastic. So I don't know if anybody else had those rooms. But that is that was what was called the parlor room or the front room, that you could just as a kid just walk by, and those were all the rooms where the community would come and just have conversations and talk about current events and talk about anything that was on their mind and on their heart. So I did learn that the word parlor room comes from the French root word meaning to talk. So I thought that was cool. So I thought I would share that this morning. So if you are other than Primetime, if you are on the call, if you want to put in the chat box, you want to type the name that you prefer to be called, and then type where you're from, and then one word that describes how you feel about current events or just as 2020 as a whole, because there was a lot going on. So for introductions, just type your preferred name that you would like to be referred by. If you see on my frame, it says Gwen Williams. My pronouns are she, her, her. So you can always put that in there as well. We want to make sure that we are inclusive and refer to people how they want to be referred to. And then as everybody introduces themselves in the chat room and puts, you know, how they're feeling about current events, and as 2020 ends, I would like to turn it over to my friend Knellee. She's going to be just setting some parameters for our discussion today. And so, Knellee, I leave it to you.
Thank you, Gwen.
You're welcome.
So, good morning again, everybody. I am going to share with you just it's a poem, and if you've attended training with me, it's a poem that we've used in the past, but this is a poem that really helps to set the tone for the way that we're going to engage, or we're inviting each other to engage in this space together. And it's called A Necessary Space. And so I'm going to pull it up on the screen so that as I read it aloud, you can actually see the words. And if this is something that you like, I will share a copy in, if I can share a copy in the chat box, I will. So today we are inviting each other to create necessary space for each other. Today we will create necessary space because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars and we have all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and to continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our necessary space together, and we will work on it side by side. So I'm going to leave that up for a moment, and if you want to just, share, what I invite all of us to do is to either share one aspect of this that really resonates with you, and or if there is something that is in this necessary space poem that you feel you'd like to add, so that you feel safe and that you feel brave and you feel that you're able to engage in this conversation today, feel free to add whatever you think might be missing. So I can't see the chat box, so someone else might have to read what's all right. And if you think of something while we're having a conversation that maybe it comes up because in that moment you feel that it's missing and we didn't address it, you can always add in the middle of the conversation something that you think would help to create necessary space.
We will not be perfect. I like we call each other to more truth and love. We call each other to more truth and love, powerful, but maybe more powerful is we call each other and ourselves to more truth and love. No judgment or a safe space.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So, and they're coming still. There may be discomfort. We'll work on it side by side. Respect for everyone's views. The 5 voices. Work side by side. So thank you so much for, if you could just give a thumbs up if you're in agreement with this way of engaging together today. Thank you. So, and secondly, before I leave you, when we have these conversations, as we're all well aware, it can stimulate some emotion, and that's good because emotion helps to inform the way that we make decisions. It helps us to know what's important. And so we might hear somebody say something that we either agree with strongly and we have a strong emotion about that and we feel passionate about it, or we disagree and we have a strong emotion about that. In order for this to be a necessary space, we have to be able to work with our emotions, as imperfect as we all are. And so I will just offer a suggestion from a social emotional learning perspective. If you notice that a strong emotion is arising in you, I invite you to take 3 steps. The first step is to notice and acknowledge what's showing up. So you can even say to yourself by labeling it, say, I feel a lot of anger, anxiety, fear, shame, guilt, whatever it is coming up for you. Joy, passion, excitement, resonance, right? Secondly, notice where you feel that in your body. And you can breathe into that space. So if it's really strong, if you feel it in your chest, just breathe into your chest and notice it. And then thirdly, adopt a yes and perspective. So what does yes and mean? Yes and means, yes, I feel this way about X, Y, and Z, and the other point of view is valid, okay? Even if I don't agree. So adopt a yes and perspective. So I'm going to type it in the chat box as I take my exit, but just give me a thumbs up if that sounds reasonable to you. Sounds reasonable, at least to try it out. And you can use this anytime, not just in this environment. So thank you, and I'm going to hand it back over to.
All right, thanks, Knellee. For for our first part of our discussion, I would like to just open it up and ask a couple of things. So, what emotions does the news or did the news of the insurrection at the Capitol raise for you? And then what questions are you grappling with? I know that we've had several conversations about equity and diversity here at Primetime. And so just reflecting on all these things. So what perspectives will you bring as you reflect on these events, even for our youth? Because a lot of us work with youth. And if we don't, we know somebody who does. And if we're not, then we're in positions to coach people who do. So then what are some of the perspectives that will bring you to reflect on these events when you're either coaching someone on helping them with youth, or you're actually directly working with youth yourselves? So I would like to open these questions up, and so we can have a place to start here. So you can either put it in the chat, or definitely you can verbalize it here in this room. This is a place of boldness. This is a place where you can speak your mind, and this is a place where you can feel comfortable to do so, and you are supported.
Well, for me, I mean, how I look at it is, what questions were like, I wasn't really too, I was upset, more so disappointed when I saw what happened at the Capitol. And then the questions I'm grappling with is, what can we do locally to kind of stop a cycle of repeated, you know, I guess hatred or disagreement. I don't know. It's something that I'm just trying to figure out. How can we locally stop a cycle from continuing on past what we saw? And that's what I asked the youth, like, when we reflect. It's like, you know, you've seen these things in different forms. Like, how would you feel? Like, how do you think we should move forward? Like, what are your views on it? Because you guys are going to be, you know, kind of coming up next, and these things are important. So how do you view us moving forward and breaking the cycle?
Good, and that's a great question to the group. So who else would like to respond to Ben?
I'll add on to Ben. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I also felt a sense of disappointment that day. I was going right into one of my classes at, I believe, Pine Grove Elementary that Wednesday. And many of my students were asking me, was I aware of what occurred? And literally it had just happened maybe around 2:40 that afternoon, 2:30, 2:40 that afternoon. And I used that time to ask the students a question, which was, you know, how do you handle having a strong opinion about something, being passionate about something, and having a belief, and having someone that could be a friend of yours or someone that you're associated with who may feel completely different and may have a different passion or a different belief? And how do you come to grips with that, you know, especially for our youth who are still in their developmental stages? And I received some really interesting responses as students really thought about that. And they said, if I have a strong belief in something, if I'm passionate about something, and I encounter someone that has a completely different belief or a different passion, I have to see I'm willing to listen to the person to see why they feel this way. But then I have to make a decision on whether I would want to be friends with this person or not. And I think that's interesting, because at this age now, where they're on their social media, they don't really know how to interpret what they're seeing, what's true, what's fake. And then now they have to come to grips with, you know, what do my friends think? You know, because my friends may feel away because their parents feel away or their families feel away. And their families may condone what they saw at the Capitol, what they witnessed at the Capitol, and may not have a problem with it. So now when you come to encountering your friends, how do you deal with that? And I just think that's very telling for the time that we're living in right now, because as instructors, as facilitators, If students were to ask you, Mr. Will or Ms. Gwen or whoever, how do I handle this situation? To be honest with you, as a Black male, there's things that I would want to say. There's ways that there's advice that I would want to give them, but I know the position that I'm in. So I have to be very careful with that. My question to the other facilitators in the room is, how do you think you would respond, if you have already, to students who may ask you, well, how do I go about handling this situation moving forward? How would you address it?
Well, it's really challenging, and it saddens me when I hear Will say that he knows as a Black man, he holds a different space when it comes there, and he can't say what he wishes he could say, right? And that to me seems to be a problem that we have, is that we're expecting the very people who are being oppressed and being threatened by a system that allowed what happened at the Capitol to happen, and they can't even speak up about it. They don't even feel like they can. With our youth, it is challenging. So there are questions, I think, that we can ask them to open up that dialogue. Like, so what do you know? What did you hear? How does that make you feel? What do you think about that? And where do you think your friends maybe got those ideas? And when we have adults who are spouting some really harmful and false facts, that becomes really hard when we're with our youth, because, as Will said, they're learning it from their parents. They're learning it from their parents. And it's a really big issue. So I think, having those, is it okay for people, I think, but that's me, that it's okay as the adult in the room to have that conversation with the kids about how we're feeling too. Like, how does that make you feel? And I can tell you that I felt angry and scared, because then I think that normalizes us talking about how we're feeling when we're having these scary things happen. And it opens up that space for kids to be able to come and talk to us. But Will, I feel it just makes me so sad to hear you having to shut what you would wish to say down, or how you would wish to say it, because that you're a Black man and it will be taken differently.
I have ways that I'll say it, Anita.
I know you will, but to have to go through those mental gymnastics that white people don't have to go through, right?
And there's some stuff in the chat as well. Julia wrote that she feels an immense sadness and disgust on what she was watching. Vicky Wright said she was shocked, sad, and very disappointed. And then so Anita was agreeing with what was said. And then Amarita said she felt upset and how easy it was for certain groups of people to storm the Capitol. Yes. So how did that feel to see certain groups get as far as they did in the Capitol, but knowing just past summer what was done to the Black Lives Matters group?
I'll share. So good morning. I with You Speak Out International, I work with Will, and we actually talked to our middle school students about that on Friday, a group of mostly Black kids. And we were like, we were asking them, like, how, did you notice that? How did that make you feel? Do you feel like the people who stormed the Capitol are going to suffer consequences? And do you think they'll suffer the same consequences as a group of people of color would have? Not even just Black Lives Matter. We also talked a bit about the pipeline protests by Native Americans and stuff like that, and the way that different groups get treated. And the kids were you know, obviously all very in tune with that. And maybe there's a bit of naivete on my part as a white woman. It just kind of broke my heart to hear these kids like know that the world would treat me differently than it treats them. Their brutal awareness of that at such a young age. And the inadequacy, that was something that I was struggling with, was a feeling of inadequacy that, you know, when you have people putting nooses around the Capitol, when you have like people walking around in shirts that say, you know, Camp Auschwitz and 6MWE, which stands for 6 million wasn't enough. I mean, I can barely say that without wanting to cry. How do you like make kids feel safe in a country that's clearly not safe for them? And again, maybe that's a bit of my own naivete as a white woman, that I maybe haven't had to grapple with those questions sooner in my life. But yeah, I think that there was no way, when we were talking to our kids, there was no way not to acknowledge, you know, the elephant in the room, which was that this was white supremacy on display for everyone to see.
If I can just jump right back in, because I appreciated Allison sharing that. And I also have, because I recorded that session from our class. I didn't want to come in and just play videos. Would you mind if I played a short clip from that class? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, is there, because I would like to play it. I'm glad Allison, and Allison Carey is one of our new facilitators on board, and she's from Washington, D.C. So she understands, and anyone that knows Washington can attest to this, but she knows firsthand the level of security that usually surrounds that building, that sacred place, and what it would take to actually get past security in a place like that. So having her expertise and having that was great to have. And if I may, I'll just play maybe 20 seconds of it, but I would like everyone on the call to hear firsthand from one of our students in that session how she felt, knowing that consequences may have possibly been different had it been a different group of people. So if I can, I'll try to share my screen. I'll make it fast. I didn't want to play video.
No worries.
Can we see this?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just play a short.
You asked me to give you a scenario.
Can we hear it?
When you have
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter, you have all these different things. Do you think law enforcement and the government are quicker to respond, right? Versus what we saw Wednesday. They responded, but maybe they were a little bit, not as aggressive.
Oh, I was just like looking at this. Well, not like I wasn't. It's not like in a way that I wasn't paying attention, but like I was just like looking into this. But like, I heard and seen that whenever it's like a Black Lives Matter protest, they're always like quicker, more violent. They're always like not only just hurting the Black people, but they're also starting to be like more violent towards the Caucasians for supporting them. But like what happened Wednesday, they were like, oh, wait, we just gotta stop, and it's just cool, you just gotta like calm down. They weren't as like, okay, no, stop doing this, hold this person, make this person stop doing that, make this person get on the ground, like how they were during the protest. They were acting a different way than how they had acted Wednesday. So like if it was like, I feel like if it was a different race, they definitely would have came quicker to like stop it. You get what I'm saying? And like get everything under control quicker, because I was just looking into this, that they were being very, very, very violent towards the protest. And when what happened Wednesday happened, they were more, I'm not saying they were more on I'm not saying they were like calmer and like weren't like trying to get everything under control. Like most of them was trying to get everything in control, but like there was more people like I feel like in the inside they're like, oh, I wish I could join in. Like that's kind of how they were acting. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love how he had to get up out of her seat and start talking. She got real animated. I love it.
Yeah, and sorry to cut your response off, Allison, but I just wanted to share that because it goes right into the responses of everyone. I think it's powerful to hear it from the students themselves.
So I just wanted to interject and say something really quick. So number one, I appreciate you giving your kids that time and that space to, open up. I recently just graduated in June. So I graduated during the pandemic and it was really hard. And then all of these things just started happening, like one thing after another. And it was just like, it just never stopped. And so I feel like having that space and that opportunity to let your kids speak their piece and have an opinion makes a difference. And it allows them at a young age to know that they have a right to speak up when they see, injustices happening, no matter where they are. I feel like for me, I can only speak from a moral and empathetic point of view, just because that's who I am. And I speak with a lot of passion about these things because I feel like it means something, and I tell my kids, it means something that one day you're going to be able to grow up and you're going to be able to vote. And you need to know these things now. So that way, when it comes to that, you're not going to be scrambling, trying to figure out, well, who should I vote for? How should I go about voting? How do I vote? And I think it's really important for the kids to know. And I know we didn't have that opportunity, even in high school, like to speak. And, we didn't have that ground to really get into like how we feel about it. We spoke about, okay, this is who the president could potentially be. These are the two people that are running to be president. And then this is what their job entails. And it wasn't really like how do you feel about it, or how do you go about living in a time where things like this could potentially happen.
And if I could jump in, thank you for that lyric. I was reading an article dated back January 17th of 2020, where it was entitled, Black Americans are deeply pessimistic about the country under Trump, whom 8 in 10 described as a racist. In the 2016 election, Trump asked Black America, what have you got to lose? Let's fast forward. The verdict came in. They have fears about whether our children will have a fair shot to succeed, in a belief that white Americans don't fully appreciate the discrimination that Black people experience. But I think I have to say, after Wednesday, that last Wednesday, that I actually have to think about that now, because I think that was a wake-up call to white America to say, hey, now you have our full undivided attention, and now we see that there is a difference. And it's a difference that the voices have been trying to tell them for all of the years, and now we have the world listening. And I just, right now, I'm just thanking the Almighty for how things played out, because it had to come a day that others had to see this, and they had to see the indifference. And unfortunately, it happened on the backs of people that lost their lives, and all sorts of other things. So thank you for that lyric.
Yeah, I agree. Just knowing, I spoke to the kids that I work with. My kids are the eldest group of kids that we have here at Florence Fuller, and they range from grades 4 to 5. And just hearing what they have to say about it, especially in a generation where everything is on social media, so no one really gets there to have their own opinion. No one really gets to have the say so, because it's just all dictated by what does the general population think? What does, what do my peers think? Sorry, they're cutting the grass outside. But I tell my kids all the time, it's very important that you have your own head on your shoulders, to have an opinion about these things, and that just because your family thinks one way doesn't necessarily mean that you have to think the same way. Just because your friends think one way doesn't mean that you have to think the same way. And I feel like that goes to show is very prevalent in what's happening now. Like so when I was in high school, I think it was around the time, 2016 was when Trump became the president, and I was in high school at that time. And so I don't know why they did it. I didn't agree with the decision, but we had the Bobcat News. I went to Boca High, and they allowed the news reporters of the Bobcat News to go around and ask all of the student body, if you had a chance to vote, who would you vote for? If you could vote, who would you vote for? And so many people voted for Trump. And when asked about it, or when, confronted about their decision, it was just, it was a joke, And a lot of people took that presidency, the 2016 election, as a joke. And it became this is what it allowed. This is what that presidency entailed. And as optimistic as I would like to be about the situation and about the injustices, I honestly don't think that it would happen in my lifetime, because it's just, I feel like everybody's just too far gone. I feel like the media doesn't give anybody time to, soak it all in. It's just, this is what's happening. This is here. This is how you should feel. And it's a lot, and it's draining emotionally, physically, mentally. It's just a lot to deal with. And so I could only imagine how the kids feel.
For sure. Patrick shared that he felt shocked watching the scenes. Then he felt real strong anger when he spoke with people who did not attribute the insurrection mindsets to the president and his inciting tactics. So he felt really upset that they did not correlate those two things for him. And then when you're talking about social media, there was a story on social media shared about a girl who had a Trump sign behind her, but since she didn't put her political stance out there, they were sent death threats and violence. So social media does play a huge role in how we see things and what we do. And it has a way of kind of trying to shape reality for those who don't do the research or look into it for themselves. So we have a couple more comments in here. Stefania wrote, our youth are having to grow up so fast, innocence is being taken away. And we have a duty as a parent on a community to provide security when that happens. But what about the times when we can't really? So that would be my question. So for those of you on the call, do you really feel like you can provide security for your children, for your nephews, nieces, grandkids, friends of yours? Do you really feel like you can provide security for them if they are Black or brown?
So I just have something to say, like a short story. So one day I was at my aunt's house and I was at the pool and I was talking to this lady, and she was a white lady, and she asked me, well, we were just talking, and she mentioned to me, she's like, well, I have a Black son and he's 8 years old. And I'm afraid to touch the basis of race with him because, in my family, we don't look at him as a Black child. He's just my son. He's around a diaspora of people all the time. And I didn't feel like it was my place as a parent, because I don't have any kids, so I can't give parenting advice to anybody. But I just felt like morally it was my place to say something for her child, because I don't think it's preventable. I think you get into the world one day, and especially if it's not talked about in your home, it just kind of hits you. And suddenly, because of the color of your skin, you're treated differently. And you don't know how to deal with that. It's a lot. Growing up, I went to my elementary school was a predominantly white school, and in Boca Raton, I grew up in Boca Raton. And whenever I went to my dad's side of the family, his side of the family is from Delray, and you know, they don't speak like me. We come from like kind of two different worlds. And so when I used to go to my dad's house, they used to tell me, oh, there's the white cousins, there's our white cousins, but only because I speak properly or because, you know, I didn't want to indulge in the things that they were. And it's no hate, because obviously these are things that they were taught as young children. But I feel like not having that conversation, not having that ability and that space to open up creates a lot of fear, and fear turns into hate, and hate turns into violence, and it's just a spiraling ball of just mortality and badness.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer the question, I don't think that it's impossible, but I think having a conversation would help prepare the youth for life.
Yeah, perfect.
And
Thank you.
when I hear Lyric speaking, it just makes me so sad, because as a 63-year-old woman, I keep saying, well, it's not going to happen in my lifetime, but maybe in my kids' lifetimes or my grandchildren's lifetimes. And now when I hear even a young person like Lyric doubting it can happen, that cynicism, that just tells me we just have so much work to do. And I appreciate Rose talking about the election of 2016, because if you were in a school in 2016 after the election, you saw our brown children and our Black children crashing and burning to the point where teachers had to stop teaching and just talk to them. Brown children were talking to each other about having their aunts or their uncles or their abuelas taken from them. Black children were worried about everything that we've just seen over the last 4 years. And so people who were surprised about what happened clearly weren't paying attention, or clearly were so comfortable in their stance in life and society that they didn't need to, because it was there. Our children have been suffering under the stress always, and it really just got amped up since the election.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I, you know, there's a question that came up, you know, in my mind. It's like, why are we here at this point and still having discussions that are both enlightening and exhausting at the same time? And, you know, it's basically, we have to, you know, it's like every day you get up and you repeat. As a Black person, we have to get up every day. We still get up every day and repeat the cycle. We have to teach our children every day before they walk out of their house how to be careful, how to look out for certain things, how to do this, how to do that. Make sure you do this. You know, this is a daily, ongoing thing. Like, it just repeats itself. And we're tired.
Mm-hmm.
We're very tired.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Anita, you're 63. I turned 54, you know, this year. 54 years. Tired. But you have to continue. You have to continue to teach. You have to continue to just like embed those things inside these kids, especially if they're brown or Black. You have to.
I agree. And I feel so. I have 4 younger brothers who, needless to say, are all Black. And so I used to think, you know, like when school shootings happen, like, oh, you know, that could never be, like, it'll never, you know, you never know, like, you never think it could happen to you. And then a school shooting happened at Stoneman Douglas, not too far away from us, at Boca High. And so going through that and watching the precautions of what it meant if a fire drill was pulled, it was hard. It was very mind-boggling. And it's just like to know, like, these are things that we should have been doing before it got so close to home. And I feel like it's the same thing being a Black person. with Black brothers, with a Black father, with Black uncles. And even now, I just try to repost it as much as I can on my social media because that's my biggest platform. And I just pray every day. I just have to pray, and I just have to like thank God, like, you know, my brothers are alive and they're well. But you know, it's not too far from my mind that it won't be me. It can't be me. Because, you know, you look at it and you say, this can't be me, or I would never imagine it happening. But you don't realize that these are real people. These are real families, even though they're not your families. These are people who could be you if given that situation. And it's stressful. But I think that it's important. And I'm glad that, you know, I'm upset that it had to take for this to happen, for our voices as Black people to be heard. But at the same time, I thank God that there's Black people in our community that are strong enough to go out there on the front lines every day and fight for our rights and fight for our protection, because, you know, not a lot of us would be, you know, willing to do that. So, and I think, you know, our white allies who go out there and get on the front lines every day and help, because I feel like their voices, you know, can reach and go places where our voices won't be heard. And so I think although it's sad that this has to happen, I think that it's very eye-opening, and I think that it's very very important, because, you know, it's no longer a secret. Nobody's trying to hide it anymore. You know, this is America, and this is what it is, and this is how we're going to go forward.
All right, I put into the chat, so I do want to take time so we can actually be in some small groups too. I put in the chat because there's a lot of emotion, so I want us to break this down in just a little bit smaller groups so we can all have a chance to chat. You will be in a group with somebody from Primetime that is a part of Primetime's Equity Committee. Pardon me. And so I put some questions in there to start, but I definitely want to have continue to have more of these conversations in these breakout rooms. And I will give you about just 10 minutes inside these breakout rooms, and then we'll come back together. But I do want for us to be able to hear more voices, and then sometimes that works better in a small group. All right, thanks everybody for returning. So I would like to hear from the individual rooms some key takeaways. So I will start with room 1, and I will be calling on at least the person who is part of the Equity Committee for Primetime. So in room 1, that would be Miss Anita to share out any key takeaways from that room.
One of our key takeaways was that we need to provide the space for our youth to talk, and that the burden of this should not be falling on our Black and brown brothers and sisters, but it falls squarely on the shoulders of white people. Those are the two big key takeaways.
All righty, perfect. And then room 2, the person from the Equity Committee. So that is Knellee, would you like to?
Sure. Yeah. So some of what Anita shared was echoed there. In a nutshell, we kind of contrasted, you know, what white youth versus Black and brown youth might be experiencing and what emotions they might be sensing. A big part of the discussion was around the need for a systematic approach to educating young people, because they don't know their history. The history that affects them, but also the history of their white young people that affects their friends, and how it's related to what's happening today. We talked a lot about the role of parents educating at home. So we talked about just the parallel, all the different tracks that we can come at this, so that there is a true understanding of the roots of this injustice, and also having some accountability in terms of taking action. We also talked about the fact that that's not enough, that on a personal or interpersonal level, we also need to frame it in a way that helps white people or people who may not feel like this is really affecting them, even though they have sympathy, they don't really have empathy because it's not affecting them personally. So how can we make this personal and make everyone understand that it is personal for you, even if you're not the direct victim? And the final point was around how can we kind of organically embrace in our own interactions, just broaden our perspective by interacting with each other and encouraging our children to interact with each other so that our cultural diversity, knowledge, and reservoir of experience, of lived experience expands, because that's ultimately the foundation for really understanding another person's point of view. So things like, related to even sharing food or culture or stuff like that. And then I think I hope I captured everything. If anybody else wants to chime in, some good quotes from Lyric, pressure burst pipes, personalized versus educate. Yeah, make it personal, take action, and a very strong awakening. Yeah, that this is actually part of a collective awakening. Is sort of like the big picture, and that's one way to kind of get everybody involved, even if it doesn't affect them personally.
Yeah. Anita put in the chat, we discussed the role of history being taught to our youth, supporting the white supremacy. All right, so in room 3, we had several members, just like in room 2, from our Primetime Equity Committee. So Catherine or Suzette?
I'll jump in. So we also spoke about a lot that has been stated, but some other things we talked about were that words really matter, right? So really kind of calling out what is, riot versus protest versus insurrection, those things, it's really important for us as we're having conversations with young people also, right? To be defining those things and then also calling those things out. We also had some conversation around kind of almost what feels a little bit like apathy from an older generation because things have been for so long. And this idea of white supremacy, or this, it's not an idea, white supremacy, right, has been around for a very long time, right? And the fight continues. And we also talked about the importance of having different conversations and being aware of the viewpoints of different people around us. To that point, we also talked about the conversations that Black and Brown parents have to have with their kids every single day, right, before they leave the house, and the complete lack of awareness of white people about those conversations because they don't have to have them, right? And so just, encouraging that space for all kids to speak about, openly about different things. That's part of educating, white kids and white people as well about things that are different for Black and Brown, especially Black and Brown males. We talked about kind of not being able to wear, for example, hair in the way that you want to, right? As a Black male, dreads and things of that nature, or twists or whatever, because of the construct of white supremacy, right? You show up as dangerous in the world, and other indicators make you even more dangerous in their eyes. Anybody else want to jump in? Those were kind of some of the key points that I had jotted down.
I think you captured it pretty well, Catherine.
All right, then room 4, Rose?
Yeah, so we did hit on this, that it is a very sensitive subject as far as these questions are concerned and what's going on in the world. And some of the things that we hit upon was allowing students to see that we have emotions, but we are able to control our emotions. We need to teach them to have self-control, accountability, leadership, and integrity. We hit on some very important pointers here. Allowing youth to become, or teaching them to become youth investigators, that it's important to come in with an open mind to seek understanding. which will make this conversation much easier. There was I quoted one person, Miss Lawanda, on this. We want to be understood, but we are not willing, because we started talking about adults too. We want to be understood, but we don't want to understand. That was like really hit me right there. So I had to quote as far as what she said, and because it's true, because we're dealing with kids or youth, but at the same time, we have to start with adults. And, Mr. Laron, we were talking about pointing that finger and all of that stuff. And, when you point that finger and they did and they did and they did, there's those other three fingers that's pointing back at you about what did you do? What are you going to do? And it starts with us as far as the adults are concerned. We talked about that the only people that we can control is ourselves. And we've also hit on the president, okay? And we want to know some whys, because right now it's becoming a little bit personal, especially if you voted for him back in 2016, okay, and then you came to 2020 and you still voted for him. Okay, this became a personal matter now, because now it's like we're looking at, you're voting for someone that has no morals and no values and all of this type of stuff. But I think at the same time, since this election and since this insurrection has happened, people are now seeing him for what he is, because now he threw those same people that he encouraged underneath the bus. This man is for self, and we can clearly see that. Okay. And we also hit on the why, why as adults that we can't sit down and have adult conversations where we agree to disagree, and if we can't agree to disagree, what do you expect our kids, are going to be doing? We need to start teaching. We have some serious work to do as far as Americans here. Okay, we're in America, whether you're a naturalized citizen, whatever you may be at this particular point, but you're here in America. America, we have work to do. Okay, so it starts with us. It doesn't start with these kids. It's time for us to start teaching these kids as far as what should be happening, how they should be responding, and their correct responses as far as their emotions are concerned. So those were some of the things that we hit on in our group, and I would love to see our group again. That's it for me.
All right. Well, I wanted to thank all the groups for sharing out, the highlights and the key points that were shared. This has been an amazing time. This is the Prime Time Parlor Room. And I think this is the inauguration of it, but I hope it won't be the last Prime Time Parlor Room discussion. I think that keeping this discussion moving along, and it could be about any topic that we feel necessary, just being able to come together as a community across different ages, across different backgrounds, across different settings, and really just have open conversations so we can see each other as people and not just that other group, if that makes sense. Okay. So please do not let this be the last time you have open forum conversations. We have modeled it for you here at Prime Time to see what it looks like and how it can look in your organization. So I really would ask that you try to practice doing some of these inside your own organizations as we wrestle with it here in Prime Time. Does anyone have any other closing thoughts that they would like to share before our time ends?
I just wanted to say, I really appreciated having this platform to speak and have the open discussion from the different races and different viewpoints, because that was one of the things that I brought up was just a lot of people expect Black people to meet this conversation with hate and anger, and I feel like this is a conversation that could only stem from understanding and empathy and love, as well as compassion. So I just really appreciate having the opportunity to have this conversation.
All right, thank you, Larry. Suzette?
Well, I think Larry said it all. I just wanted to thank all of the practitioners and community members for joining us this morning. I know that it was a really quick turnaround, and I want to thank Gwen for bringing this idea to prime time. She has been a real leader in this work, and I just wanted to publicly thank you, Gwen, and you know, there'll be more as the community wants them. So have a great day.
All right. And check out the chat. There's some great stuff in chat. And as I say in all my trainings, have a great day and remember to tell somebody you love them today.